In the summer of July 2014, 4 adventurous souls ventured deep into an unexplored cave, driven by their desire for thrill and excitement. Cova Dels Arquets, ominously nicknamed the Cave of Caskets, was about to prove its name in a way none of them could have ever imagined. Little did they know, this cave concealed a hidden danger that cunningly lures divers into a deadly trap. Fueled by their brazen confidence and compounded by a single critical mistake, this once promising adventure ended in the most heart-wrenching way possible. These are the final moments of the Cova Dels Arquets diving tragedy. The Cova dels Arquets, also referred to as the Cave of Caskets, stands out among Catalonia's northeastern cave system. Part of the Montsant range, Cova dels Arquets is just one of several caves in the area. While it's not especially expansive compared to other underwater caves, spanning only 80 meters end to end, its structure is remarkably simple. The cave's entry point is just 7 meters beneath the surface, making it relatively easy to access. However, despite its seemingly innocuous name and alluring appearance, very few dared to explore its treacherous inner chambers. On a scorching morning on July 19, 2014, the 4 friends were invigorated by the intense sun as they set off on a long-anticipated adventure. Upon reaching their destination, Ricard, Dionisio, and another friend quickly suited up, shared nervous looks, and dove into the crystal-clear waters. The 4th friend remained aboard their boat to monitor the area and keep watch. They soon found themselves at the submerged entrance to Cova dels Arquets, awestruck that they were about to enter. Inside, only faint glimmers of light pierced the darkness, revealing an intimidating abyss, void of any clear shapes. They noticed the cave's walls were composed of soft clay and the floor blanketed with fine silt, conditions that posed severe risks for cave divers. Disturbing the silt could dramatically reduce visibility, leaving them blind and defenseless in a potentially deadly environment. Under such circumstances, it's common practice for divers to set up a dive line outside the cave. This line acts as a guide to safely exit in case they lose sight or orientation. Unfortunately, Ricard, Dionisio, and their companion had forgotten to bring their rope, a critical error that exposed them to significant risks within the cave. But despite the oversight, they chose to press forward, a decision that they would soon regret. Confronted with the gravity of their situation, the 3rd diver felt overwhelmed and decided to exit. Uncomfortable with the lack of preparation, he expressed his concerns about the forgotten rope and the extreme risks of continuing. While Ricard and Dionisio valued his opinion and respected his decision to leave, they remained undeterred, confident in their experience and abilities. They had navigated similar situations without a rope before, and reassured their friend they would manage just fine by themselves. Ricard and Dionisio exchanged a meaningful glance, nodded to each other, and with a determined thumbs up, they propelled deeper into the cave. With every stroke, they moved confidently further into the depths, guided by the beams of flashlights and the reassuring sight of the cave's entrance in the distance. They navigated the first 115 feet effortlessly. The cave's interior was mesmerizing. The silt remained undisturbed, the clay-like walls were stable, and the streaks of sunlight danced through the water above them, creating a serene atmosphere. But as they ventured over 260 feet into the cave, a mutual realization dawned on them. It was time to head back. However, shortly into their return journey, they were struck with horror. A thick cloud of silt had risen, obscuring their vision and reducing visibility to mere inches. They were so focused on pushing forward that they didn't even realize the disturbance their fins were causing below. Panic set in as they faced their worst nightmare. They were lost in a murky underwater maze. Without a rope or visible markers, orientation was impossible. Dionisio's heart sank with the heavy realization that finding the entrance could take hours, perhaps longer. Waiting for the silt to settle wasn't a viable option. It could take days, and their air supply would run out long before. They were trapped, possibly facing their final moments in the pitch-black depths of the cave. But as they were about to lose all hope, a slender beam of light pierced from the dark above. Hope surged. Sunlight, a rare blessing in the deep, signaling a way out. Desperation lent strength to their limbs as they swam towards the increasing brightness. The gap, initially wide enough for a single person to pass through, soon tapered, threatening to end their escape in a tight, suffocating dead end. They likely feared a slow and excruciating death in the enveloping darkness, but just as suddenly, the passage miraculously widened, revealing an unexpected section of the cave. Confusion gave way to relief as they realized they had stumbled into an air pocket. The two quickly took off their gear and took a deep breath of air. Immediately after, Dionisio gave Ricard a terrified look, aware of the potential danger of carbon dioxide poisoning often present in deep air pockets. Yet fortune was on their side this time. The air was clear, a rare stroke of luck in their perilous escape from Cova Dels Arquets. Outside the cave, realizing something wasn't right, the two other friends of Ricard and Dionisio promptly contacted emergency services at 11 a.m. The local authorities, already keeping a close eye on the safety of nearby swimmers, snorkelers, and divers, responded swiftly. Corporal Fernando Aguirre, the team leader, wasted no time in assembling a rescue team, aiming to have divers ready by the late afternoon or early evening. He sought assistance from local fishermen, diving clubs, and marine biologists in hopes of gathering insights into Cova Dels Arquets. Anyone that could potentially help, Aguirre reached out to them. Unfortunately, the information available on the deeper chambers of the cave was limited, with only a vague map provided by one biologist that offered little detail. Corporal Aguirre, familiar with the grim realities faced by trapped divers, believed Ricard and Dionisio were still within the cave. Holding on to hope, he speculated they might have found an air pocket, though he was aware that their chances of survival were slim, if not. Meanwhile, Ricard and Dionisio clung desperately to stay alive within the air pocket of the cave. Time seemed to stretch into an endless nightmare as they battled dehydration, hypothermia, and deepening despair. Ricard's condition worsened significantly compared to Dionisio's, and as their predicament grew increasingly severe, both men started to accept the grim reality of their fates. Hours slipped by, with Ricard struggling to keep his head above the water. Occasionally, he would slip beneath the surface, and Dionisio, mustering every bit of strength left in his weary body, would manage to pull him back. Yet, as the ordeal continued, the combined toll of mental and physical strain overwhelmed them. Ultimately, when Ricard went under one last time, a weakened Dionisio could no longer save him, and Ricard continued to sink. Now alone and shivering in the frigid water, Dionisio faced the harsh reality that his own end was likely near, much like his friends. But unbeknownst to him, rescue efforts were underway. Corporal Aguirre and his team of professional divers had been on their search since 5 p.m. Early into their mission, they hit the dense wall of silt that Ricard and Dionisio had disturbed, a clear indicator they were on the right path. Initially, progress seemed promising, but the murky waters obscured any sense of direction. Even for the highly experienced rescue divers, it made the search nearly impossible at this point. With conditions too challenging to continue, Corporal Aguirre made the call to wait until visibility improved. Fortunately, by the time the divers reached the entrance to Cova Dels Arquets the following morning, the silt had settled. After entering clearer waters and retracing their path back to the deeper parts of the cave, the rescue divers were caught by surprise from deep within the darkness. It was a beam of light piercing through. In fact, it was the same dim beam of light that had likely misled Ricard and Dionisio. Understanding the men's likely rationale, the rescuers believed that following that light would have been the divers' only option. However, this light was obviously not sunlight. In cave diving, divers often carry powerful underwater lights to navigate through the dark submerged passages. These lights can cast rays that bounce off the cave walls, creating the appearance of dim light in the otherwise pitch-black environment. This was likely what tricked Ricard and Dionisio. The rescue divers swam up through the same narrow opening and pushed their way through to the air pocket. When the first rescue diver reached the air pocket, he spotted Ricard's lifeless body floating in his neoprene wetsuit. Expecting a similar fate for Dionisio, he was astonished to find him alive, albeit barely, clinging to a jagged rock on the cavern's distant side. under the direst conditions, Dionisio had miraculously survived. Yet even with rescue within reach, Dionisio resisted assistance, refusing to put on the air tank offered by the rescuers. His delirium was profound, and he seemed unaware of his surroundings. Concerns that Dionisio might only cooperate with a familiar face, Corporal Aguirre swiftly surfaced and persuaded the friend of Dionisio to help with the rescue. Though he was reluctant at first, he eventually agreed to help. This approach seemed to have worked, and Dionisio did calm down a bit. However, as the day wore on, with the situation becoming increasingly dangerous, Corporal Aguirre made the decision to sedate Dionisio to facilitate the rescue. Within 24 hours of their cave entry, Dionisio was safely brought to the surface, accompanied by Corporal Aguirre, the rescue team, and his friend. Shortly thereafter, Ricard's body was retrieved. In the aftermath, Corporal Aguirre initiated a comprehensive investigation to determine the causes of this tragic dive. His report criticized the divers for their lack of adequate training and experience necessary for such a demanding dive. It also highlighted their failure to follow essential safety measures, such as installing a dive line, which could have significantly mitigated the risks in the silt-obscured waters. While some criticized Dionisio for not preventing Ricard's drowning, Aguirre's report defended him, acknowledging his multiple efforts to save Ricard, ultimately overwhelmed by exhaustion and unable to save him in the final moments.